You poor woman can just stand and watch. I was so excited to attend my daughter Margaret's wedding, one of the most important events in her life. But as soon as we arrived at the venue, Sharon, Margaret's MIL, had the audacity to say those words to me. I never expected to be told to just stand and watch. I was so taken aback by her heartlessness that I was left speechless. However, I refused to back down and stay silent. Margaret is my daughter. She's not the type to endure this kind of treatment without speaking up, a trait she likely inherited from me. Margaret stood up with a resolute attitude and declared loud and clear to Sharon, "Mom, let's leave here." "Yes, let's go," I agreed. There's no need to let these people ruin such an important day for us. Besides, it seems like these in-laws have no understanding of their place. Since we have this opportunity, it might not be a bad idea to make them understand once and for all. From here on out, our mother-daughter counterattack begins, refusing to be pushed around any longer. Within just 10 minutes of our retaliation, Sharon was on the verge of a breakdown. Seeing her like that makes me feel a sense of vindication, but I'm not ready to let up just yet. If they think they can control us as they please, they're gravely mistaken. I'm Nancy, turning 65 this year. But I'm still going strong. I work as a winemaker at a winery. When you hear winemaker, you might imagine a man. But nowadays, I'm happy to say that the number of female winemakers is gradually increasing. I used to be an ordinary woman with no connection to the world of wine. What changed me was a single television program. After graduating from college, I got a job at a regular company. There, I fell in love with a man I met at work, and we were blessed with our daughter, Margaret. Fortunately, I was able to take full advantage of the company's maternity and childcare leave policies, which allowed me to dedicate myself to raising my child without any worries. The days spent with Margaret as she grew up were filled with a happiness that nothing could replace. Yet, there were moments when a small doubt crept into my mind. Is this really enough for my life? On the surface, I had a thriving career, an adorable daughter, and a blessed work environment. My friends often expressed their envy. Still, there were times, like when my daughter was napping, when I was overcome by a sense of emptiness. It was an inescapable void, like a gaping hole in my heart. One such day, while Margaret was napping, I turned on the TV and found myself engrossed in a documentary program that caught my eye. The show followed the work of a winemaker. The man being interviewed said he used to be an ordinary salaryman. As he spoke about quitting his job to pursue his passion for wine and his quest to create the perfect bottle, I felt something stirring deep within me. Perhaps this was what I had been yearning for all along. My father loved wine, and when I lived at home, we enjoyed it together almost every evening. The recommended temperature, the perfect food pairings, the unique flavors, depths, and aromas of each wine, back then, I drank without much thought, but looking back, I realize how incredible it all was. I couldn't help but be amazed by the profound world of wine. Of course, I knew that winery owners were a male-dominated society. There were only a handful of female winemakers out there. That's precisely why I began to nurture a desire to create wines that women could enjoy deliciously and joyfully. My family supported my career change. I'm still filled with gratitude for their cooperation in household chores and picking up the kids. Thanks to their help, I was able to get a job at a winery in the next town over. As it happened, that area had many wineries, and I encountered one that was looking to take on new challenges. I worked as a clerk and a tour guide while studying the fundamentals of wine every day. Since it was a field I was already interested in, I found the learning process enjoyable. I felt a sense of fulfillment that I had never experienced in my previous jobs. But then, just as things were going well, my husband fell ill and passed away. I couldn't let the hopes of my husband, who had supported my dreams and encouraged my winemaking, go to waste. I remember vividly the joy I felt when, after desperately working my way up, I finally joined the ranks of the few female winemakers in the US. As a novice female winemaker in an era when women in the field were not as rare as they are today, my name never made it into the spotlight. But whether my name was known or not didn't matter to me. I believed there was no greater happiness than having the wine I poured my heart into creating be released into the world, bringing moments of joy to many people. As my career began to take off, I received some exciting news in my personal life. Hey, Mom! There's someone I want to introduce to you. Margaret said shyly. I met him at a town event the other day. This might be the first time I've introduced someone other than a friend to you, Mom. Someone other than a friend? With those words, I had a hunch. No way! Yeah. He's a wonderful person, someone I feel I could be with forever. I'm sure you'll like him too, Mom. On the day Margaret told me about him, I went to our meeting spot and saw a man standing next to her. He was tall and had an impressive, dignified presence. Mom, this is my boyfriend, James Garcia. James looked at me and greeted me with a friendly smile. It was a perfect smile, like that of a Hollywood actor. He said he was 40, but with such a smart demeanor and charming grin, I thought to myself that women wouldn't leave him alone. Hello. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today, despite your busy schedule. I've been wanting to meet Margaret's mother for a while now. We started dating after meeting at a town event. I never imagined I'd encounter such a wonderful person there, so I felt it was destiny. Don't be embarrassed. It's only natural, since Margaret was the only one shining so brightly in that place. As if remembering the moment they met, the two suddenly started engaging in sweet conversation. Margaret had never been involved in any frivolous talk about men before, always focused on her work. That's why, as a parent, I was genuinely happy that she had found someone she could care for so deeply. During our casual chat, I learned that James was an only child and that he was likely to take over his family's local business in the future. Oh, you're continuing the family business? Yes. Although, it's not anything particularly impressive. If you don't mind me asking, what kind of work is it? We run the Garcia Hotel. It's been getting busy lately, so I'll probably have to start acting as the next president soon. At that moment, Margaret suddenly fell silent. It's wonderful that you're already thinking seriously about such matters. Since we had just met, I thought it best not to say anything awkward and chose my words carefully. Well, given those circumstances, Margaret has been helping out with various tasks at our place. Sort of like training to be a hotel manager, you could say. James spoke with a gentle smile and took a sip of the tea in front of him. For a brief moment, I thought I saw Margaret's expression stiffen. Seeing that expression gave me an unsettling feeling. Huh? Helping out. James raised his hand as if to stop me, and began speaking over my words. Well, it's not anything major. But you know, at this age, you can't help but start thinking about the future. I'd like Margaret to become a part of our family. The way James spoke in a torrent of words gave me the impression that he wasn't giving me any opportunity to interject. Is that so? So Margaret kindly agreed to help out, which has been a huge relief. I want to make sure she never feels embarrassed about coming to the Garcia house. Margaret is just an ordinary girl you could find anywhere. She graduated from a local university, works as a company employee, and enjoys shopping and drinking with friends on her days off. She's not the type to stand out much, which made it all the more puzzling. Come to think of it, I hadn't had a single chance to talk directly with Margaret during this tea session. Hey, speaking of which, Margaret. As I tried to speak to her, James once again cut in without missing a beat. That's right, Margaret. You're going to my mom's place after this, aren't you? My mom's been looking forward to picking out your dress. Yes, of course. A dress, could it be? We were talking about having the wedding sometime this year. Popular venues get booked up quickly if you don't reserve early. With a refreshing smile, James looked straight into my eyes and said clearly, I believe a wedding is a kind of closure. That's why I want it to be a space where we can spend a special time with the people important to us. It might be a bit early, but our parents are already getting excited. I was surprised that they were already talking about the wedding, but at the same time, I felt like I had figured out the source of the uneasiness. I understood now the true nature of this discomfort. Whenever I try to talk to Margaret, James interrupts. As if he's avoiding any opportunity for us to speak directly. Could there be some inconvenient topic he doesn't want brought up? I couldn't read anything from Margaret's expression. There were no signs of anything unusual. Please look forward to our wedding. I'm sure it will be a wonderful day for Margaret's mother as well. We'll let you know once the details are settled. We'll be in touch. In other words, they intend to decide everything according to James's family's wishes. I wonder what Margaret thinks about all this. I tried to see her face, but it was hidden behind her hair and I couldn't get a good look. Later, I would come to regret not making time to talk with her directly, even if I had to force the issue. A few days later, a letter arrived from Margaret and James. It was a notice about holding a dinner party for both families to meet before the wedding. It was my work's off-season, so I had some flexibility in my schedule. If they were planning to have the dinner party on that day, I could make arrangements to attend and that would be fine. But I thought they could have at least consulted me before deciding on a date. Suppressing my lingering unease, I tried to contact Margaret to confirm the details. I wanted to ask about the dress code, whether I should bring any gifts, and other small things. She must have been busy lately, as she hadn't even given me a single phone call. When I called, she finally picked up on the 10th ring, but Margaret's voice was so soft I could barely hear her. Apparently she was at work and couldn't talk on the phone. She said she would call back. Feeling bad for interrupting her work, I quickly hung up. But after that, there was no return call from Margaret. Instead, rather oddly, James called.
Nancy, did you receive the invitation to the dinner party?
Yes, it arrived the day before yesterday. I tried calling Margaret to discuss the dress code, gifts for James's family, and such, but that girl.
There's no need to go to such trouble. Just come as you normally would, that's all that matters.
With that, the call ended. Margaret seems to be busy, and I still haven't heard from her. James keeps repeating the same polite, inoffensive things like,
"Don't worry about it. Just come as you normally would."
In the end, on the day of the dinner, I wore a plain blouse and slacks, and brought a famous brand of cookies as a gift. I considered bringing some of my homemade wine, but I thought they might be surprised to receive wine from someone they were meeting for the first time, so I decided to save the wine gift for another occasion. When I entered the room where the dinner party was being held, everyone except me was already seated. Across from Margaret sat James, and next to him were people who seemed to be his parents.
Nice to meet you. I'm Sharon, James's mother. I'm so happy to finally meet you.
At first glance, her attire appeared plain, but each piece she wore was of high quality. And more than anything, her aura was different. Her dignified demeanor and flawless presence reminded me strangely of James. Nice to meet you.
Well, I've always wanted a daughter. I'm so glad Margaret is joining us. I heard she only had a mother, so I wondered what kind of girl she was, but I feel relieved now.
Is this really the time to be saying such things? Everything she says is irritating to listen to.
Well, we're planning to have the wedding soon and preparations are underway. It's sure to be the perfect day to celebrate the start of their life together. Look forward to it.
Sharon seems unable to contain her excitement. Her husband just laughs with a ha ha ha, occasionally downing some alcohol, but doesn't seem to do much else.
Oh, and about the wedding gift, let's just forget about that sort of thing.
Suddenly bringing up the topic of money, I was at a loss for how to respond when Sharon continued. A wedding gift.
Oh my, are you saying you won't let them marry without a gift? I can't believe there are still families like that these days. So, how much do you want?
I felt like Sharon was glaring at me.
No, I hadn't even considered a wedding gift. We'll follow your wishes on that matter.
She's covering her mouth with a handkerchief, but she can't hide her vulgar laughter.
And you'll have to give us a boy eventually,
Her outdated remark sent a shiver down my spine. Ever since that unpleasant dinner party, my desire to avoid seeing James and his parents has only grown stronger by the day. 2 weeks after the dinner party, I received a message from James.
We got married today.
I wanted to hear the news directly from my daughter, but it seems Margaret has quit her job to help out at the Garcia Hotel. She must be busy with her training as a hotel manager. Still, I had no idea the owners of James's family, who run several hotels in this area as a hotel group, would be so high and mighty. I'll attend the wedding because I want to see Margaret in all her glory. But after that, I'd rather keep my distance from them. Even after our first meeting, I still couldn't get through to Margaret on the phone. She only sends a few messages late at night. No matter what I ask, all she says is, "I've been too busy to contact you. I'm sorry." Her short replies, like telegrams, only add to my anxiety. I managed to find out the date and location of the ceremony, but I don't know anything else. For someone about to get married, I don't sense any aura of happiness from her at all. Can the wedding really go smoothly like this? Even though Margaret has always been somewhat plain, I thought she might show a glimmer of excitement or longing on her face for her wedding day. The day of the wedding arrived, with my unease still lingering. I attended Margaret and James's wedding and tried to find my seat, but it was nowhere to be found. While I was puzzling over this, the ceremony began. As I hurried towards the family seating area, Sharon approached me.
You poor woman can just stand and watch.
It was so sudden that I couldn't comprehend what was happening.
I never said you could sit. And to think you'd try to sit in the family section.
She looks down on me with an expression of utter disbelief. The people around us don't try to stop Sharon's behavior, they just watch. Some of them even have the gall to point their cameras at me, as if to say, "Oh, something interesting is happening." They seem to delight in the misfortune of others. I never thought I'd be subjected to this kind of treatment at my age. It's as if they anticipated my confusion and planned this whole thing. The other guests, who keep glancing at me out of the corners of their eyes to see my reaction, are all wearing matching ties or handkerchiefs. They have the Garcia Hotel Group logo on them, so they must be Sharon and James's colleagues. I also spot people who seem to be connected to the Garcia Hotel, exchanging drinks while eyeing me. Looking closer, I realize it's wine from my own winery. The moment I saw that, I felt something snap inside me. Perhaps noticing my reaction, Margaret gracefully stood up. As she rose from the stage, her posture was dignified and beautiful, and I found myself captivated by my own child.
Mom, let's go home.
Margaret approached me and called out. I stand up to join her.
Yes.
I stepped forward from where I was standing, heading towards the stage. I thought I saw James glance in our direction for a moment, but I couldn't care less anymore. There was only one place I needed to go. I grabbed a wine bottle from the drink bar next to the stage. The drink bar corner was set up for the guests. In addition to wine, there was beer and specialty fruit juices. Margaret signaled to a nearby staff member and asked them to bring a large container. There was only one thing I had to do. I took the wines lined up at the drink bar one by one and moved them into the nearby container the staff had brought. Then I asked the venue staff to carry the entire container outside.
What are you doing? I won't allow you to do as you please. Huh, Margaret's mother, do you want the alcohol that badly? Oh, I see. So that's how it is. If you can't get by without drinking cheap booze, then by all means, take it.
I pulled out a slip of paper and a check from my bag.
I can't leave this wine with people like you who don't understand its value and don't appreciate it.
I filled out the check I had in my bag with the regular price of the wine.
I put my heart into making this for the ceremony. I'm so sorry it was completely out of place. What is the meaning of this? A poor person writing a check. Don't make me laugh. And what's this about putting your heart into making it? I haven't heard anything about that.
James was beside himself, making a pitiful scene, while Sharon glared at me from the family seating area, waving her handkerchief. But I no longer had anything to fear.
As the parent who gave birth to this wine, I simply cannot leave it with people who don't understand its worth. It's too painful to watch, so I will buy it back. Huh? Parent who gave birth to it? What are you talking about?
The moment Sharon stopped waving the handkerchief in her frenzied state, I spoke out without a moment's hesitation.
I'm the one who crafted this wine. As a winemaker, it's like my own child that I've poured my heart and soul into raising. I can't stand by and watch it being treated so terribly. And as Margaret's mother, I can't endure this humiliation any longer. You're lying, right? That wine, isn't it from the winery we always use at the hotel? I thought the winemaker was some old man. I'm working as the next generation winemaker. It's a shame that you are saying you have no interest in your business partners.
The wine I was holding was the one I had brought as a gift for this wedding. It was a special, once-in-a-decade vintage. It was a wine I had created with the sole desire to make something worthy of celebrating my beloved daughter's wedding someday. It was one of the bottles I had crafted with a premium label and serial number, not available in regular stores or bars. The guests who seemed to know it had been made with a premium label started murmuring. Apparently, among wine enthusiasts, the wine I had crafted with Margaret's wedding in mind was known as the Phantom Wine. There were a few people even in this venue who genuinely wanted to savor that wine. However, I'm sorry to say that as the winemaker who gave birth to this wine, and as a mother, I have convictions I cannot compromise.
Nancy, please calm down a bit. What do you mean, calm down?
I mean, there are a lot of guests watching. For now, just calm down and take your seat. After telling me to take a seat, perhaps realizing that I didn't have one, he started whispering something to a nearby staff member. I could hear him clearly from where I was standing, instructing them to add a chair to the family seating area. I couldn't stay silent any longer.
I'd like to know, why did you hold this wedding?
I asked, looking James straight in the eye.
Well, a wedding is to announce your marriage to everyone who came, and then to express your gratitude to your parents, like we got married. Thank you for everything up until now.
Oh, how wonderful!
I'm so glad my boy grew up to be such a kind man.
Sharon was expressing her joy without any regard for the people around her.
I understand now what you mean.
Hearing that, James looked at me with a relieved expression and picked up the microphone.
I'm glad Margaret's mother understands. Now, please take your seat. We have the rest of the ceremony to get through.
James urged me to sit down as if nothing had happened. I couldn't comprehend what kind of nerve it would take to tell me to shut up and participate in the ceremony. At that moment, Margaret stood up.
I can't stand up anymore.
She was staring straight at James. James pleads with Margaret, as if seeking her help. Hey, Margaret. Nancy seems a bit worked up, so could you say something to her too? If this keeps up, it'll inconvenience the guests. As James glances at the guest seating while saying this, Margaret declares with an unwavering voice.
I've decided that I cannot share my life with you. Besides, we're not even married yet. I apologize to all of you in attendance.
With that, the guest seating area begins to buzz with chatter. Well, of course it would. Announcing that they're not even married yet at a wedding ceremony, a celebration of their new beginning. However, Margaret carries herself with a dignified demeanor, as if she can't even hear the murmurs and whispers. As if to say she has no doubts about what she's done, Margaret turns to face James and starts speaking. Undaunted by the reactions around her, Margaret continues.
And this will serve as evidence too. The rules of dormitory life.
The photos sent to the guests and me are printouts labeled dormitory contract. I'm overwhelmed by the content that reads like school regulations. It details minute rules of daily life, penalties, how to spend days off, and so on. When you showed me around the hotel, I thought something was off about the employees' behavior. I never imagined it was because of these rules, though. Looking through the photos Margaret sent, I see company mottos and regulations that are unthinkable in this day and age. Smartphones collected during work hours. Computers and smartphones in the dormitory require permission. Use of social media prohibited. And so on. Even high school students these days wouldn't be able to put up with this.
In other words, you make sure inconvenient truths don't get out to the public. In fact, you've been manipulating the books as you please, so you can't talk your way out of it. No, that's a misunderstanding. It's truly her misunderstanding.
At this, Margaret cuts him off with a look that says she can't bear to listen, and places accessories like necklaces and brooches, as well as her purse, in front of James.
I thought the Garcia Hotel's online reviews were too good to be true, but to think it's because you've been silencing your employees. Trying to boost sales through such underhanded manipulation is despicable. No, just hear me out. Let's hear this first, shall we?
Margaret plays a recording app on her smartphone.
You can't even do something like this? What's wrong with you? I could send you back to your parents' place. You were using your smartphone without permission in the middle of the night, weren't you? If you can't focus on your work, are you going to quit? But if you leave this hotel, you won't be able to find work anywhere else with your skills.
Sharon and James's intimidating scolding continues.
Hey, can I dock this girl's pay? Rather than paying a useless person like her, it'd be far more meaningful to add it to James's allowance. Oh, of course. Let James buy whatever he likes. I'm sick of even looking at this waitress's face.
Sharon and James's yelling goes on and on.
What will you do if more people find out about this?
James and Sharon are struck speechless, frozen in place. James then looks at us with an expression that seems to plead for mercy. However, considering everything that's happened, we can't afford to go easy on him.
Hey, back when we first met, there was a time when you gave me gifts like accessories, remember? Why did you give me those presents? Well, you see, I was desperate to catch Margaret's attention, so. Then do you remember saying this?
She takes out a wallet, necklace, and brooch from her pouch, clearly high-end items at a glance, and places them on the table before asking.
I'm pretty sure you said, with just a little effort on my part, buying something like this is a piece of cake, didn't you?
In an instant, the color drains from James's face.
What? No way, that must have been, it was obviously a joke. I wish it had been a joke too. But it wasn't, was it?
Margaret operates her smartphone and sends images to the guests' smartphones.
You use this money to buy gifts for me, right? The books from this period look suspicious. Suspicious? That must be your imagination. It looks like you've been falsifying the books quite a bit, not just during this period. I noticed after I started dating you and was made to work under the guise of hotel manager training.
James and Sharon turn pale.
I thought, wow, they're keeping pretty sloppy books. And then you launched a gift strategy to win me over as your prospective wife?
Even from a distance, it's clear that the color is gradually draining from their faces. It must be something serious.
Hey, what do these numbers represent?
Margaret holds out a ledger book right in front of James.
Huh? What's this? And why does Margaret have this notebook? It's the calculation ledger. You insisted on doing it on paper and writing everything by hand in a notebook, remember?
I flip through the notebook in my hands and stop on a certain page.
Who was it that pushed this on me, saying, to become a hotel manager in the future, you need to be able to read a book or two? No, that's not what I meant by that.
Sharon tries to make excuses in a noticeably high-pitched voice. In other words, Sharon must have known about James's embezzlement and extravagant spending too.
This. There's no talking your way out of this. No way.
The notebook contained detailed records of the flow of money.
The amounts here and there don't match up. And the sheer size of these amounts isn't normal. Look, you just need to write these things down roughly. A ballpark figure is fine. Margaret doesn't understand that balance, so she tries to do it too meticulously and fails.
James speaks to me with a know-it-all attitude.
Just so you know, I used to work in accounting, so I can't turn a blind eye to these money flows. If I overlook these small discrepancies, it'll come back to bite me later.
I shove the notebook back at James.
No, you can't judge our hotel based solely on the notebook of some company's accountant. What? Are you serious?
Even James, as bold as he is, seemed to realize he couldn't continue this conversation any further. He finally shut his mouth.
Falsifying money, using it for entertainment, wasting it. It's absolutely unforgivable. That's why, when you told me to issue a marriage license, I actually tore it up and threw it away. What? No matter how excellent someone may be, no matter how distinguished their family background, I don't want to become family with someone who falsifies money and causes others to feel distrust and unease.
Margaret said all of this in one breath and then left the venue. That's my daughter for you. She has a strong core. Alarmed by this, James timidly approached me.
Hey, Margaret was just joking earlier, right? Surely she wouldn't say she's not getting married after all, not after holding such a grand wedding ceremony, right? What are you talking about?
I ask, looking James in the eye.
I mean, come on. If she gets married now, and married to me at that, she'll be set for life. And if she says, never mind, I'm calling it off here and now, wouldn't that be fraud?
James looks at me with a smug expression.
I respect my daughter's thoughts and decisions. It's not about it being a wedding ceremony or not.
About 10 minutes after Margaret said to me,
Mom, let's go home.
Sharon had become half-crazed.
Who do you think we are? Enough with the disrespect. You're just a lonely winemaker.
The easygoing smile from before had vanished from Sharon's face as she became hysterical.
I've decided not to do business with those I can't trust, so if you'll excuse me.
In the end, it was decided that there would be no further dealings with the Garcia Hotel. I don't want to supply the wine I poured my heart into making to a place that treats it so carelessly. And it seems Margaret was able to properly say goodbye to James. When they first started dating, she apparently thought James was wonderful, but halfway through, she seemed to come to her senses. When you're actually in that environment, it can be hard to notice that something's off, even when it is. I have experience with that myself. But there's nothing good about being in an environment where you can't cherish yourself. Margaret seemed to realize that through this experience, and I'm really glad. It put my mind at ease. Mom, I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble.
It's okay, I'm just glad you realized it. And I never imagined the wine I made would be treated like that either.
Since the day she fled the Garcia Hotel and broke up with James, Margaret has been working hard on her job hunt. Luckily, she quickly found a new workplace and seems to be living fulfilling days now. As for me, I'm still devoted to making wine as always. This year, we're launching a new series for the first time in several years, so the winery is extremely busy day and night. There's no time to relax, but I think it's fine because it's enjoyable in its own way. Plus, this is the first time I'm serving as the face of the brand for a new series launch, so there's that pressure too. Delicate wines, crafted by a female winemaker. With that concept, I'm determined to pour everything I've got into it. The product concept and aim were spot on, and the wine I produced became a huge hit. When I started appearing more in magazines, brochures, and sometimes even on TV, the thing I feared happened. Right after I got to work, a male employee who had arrived earlier stopped me. Apparently, a woman was sitting down at the entrance for visitors. According to him, she refused to budge until she met with me. Got it. I'll go check it out. When I went to the visitor entrance, I found the last person I expected.
You finally came. As expected, a popular female winemaker is on a different level. Don't think you can do business as usual around here after humiliating me. I've been doing business with this winery since the previous generation. I could agree to a big contract with you again, you know?
The two were talking big, but they looked much shabbier than the last time I saw them. Their clothes had lint, stains, and frays that were noticeable even from a distance, making them look pitiful.
Hey, are you listening? I thought you might be in trouble since you can't do business with the Garcia Hotel anymore, so I'm reaching out to you. How about you give me an answer? If you just bow your head now, I'm saying I'll do business with you like before. You know what'll happen if you waste this chance, don't you?
I took a breath and said to them,
You are neither affiliates nor customers. And of course, I'd like you to refrain from such nuisance behavior in the future.
At that, Sharon grabbed my shoulder with such force that it seemed she might attack me at any moment.
That's quite a way to talk. Do you understand your position? Someone who hasn't received a proper education couldn't possibly know how to speak properly, could they, Mom? Besides, an old, run-down winery like this is bound to fail soon anyway.
I'm appalled by their outrageous attitude, but if I leave them unchecked, they'll just repeat the same things.
I was aware that you were loitering around the employee entrance and peering inside from the visitor entrance many times. And of course, I also know you took products from the souvenir shop for winery tour guests. No, that was, well, it was so terrible that I consulted the police. When we installed security cameras, we got solid evidence of your numerous nuisance behaviors. With this much evidence, I'm sure you two intelligent individuals can understand.
When I said that and turned to them, their faces were paler than I'd ever seen before.
No, that's
such an underhanded trick. The two seemed determined not to apologize. It's easy to imagine that their pride won't allow them to apologize because they look down on me.
Well, I guess it can't be helped. For now, I need to get back to work. Huh? Then, for today, I'll take my leave here.
With that, I walked away from the two and returned to my workplace. Afterward, I took the security camera footage, recorded conversations as evidence, and the shoplifting history to the police for consultation. As a result, Sharon and James's actions were deemed malicious, and they now have a criminal record. Naturally, this also tarnishes the name of the Garcia Hotel Group. The hotel industry has been in a tough situation due to factors like the decline in travelers, but this latest trouble with the management seems to have made things even worse. With the flood of low ratings on review sites, it's likely only a matter of time before they go under. But that has nothing to do with me. I'm finally free from the problems with Sharon and James and have regained a peaceful life. As a producer, I'm truly happy that the wine I made has generated a lot of buzz, caught the eye of international travelers, and become an even more popular product. Not only have shipments increased, but the winery's name recognition has also gone up, making me even more enthusiastic about my work going forward. From now on, I intend to work even harder to ensure that many people seeking this flavor can enjoy the wine I create. I'm a 33-year-old office worker. My husband, Tony, is 5 years older and we've been married for 7 years. Currently, due to certain circumstances, I live with my mother. Please ask me how I ended up in this situation. Going back 2 years, Tony and I built a house. At the time, Tony had just switched jobs and we didn't have much in the way of savings or income. Tony's previous job was at a major corporation. However, he suffered from insidious harassment from his boss, leading to sleepless nights and, a few months later, he became unable to go to work. He consulted a psychiatrist and took a leave of absence for about 3 months, but with no signs of recovery, he ultimately resigned. After that, we managed to live on my salary alone. Tony, unemployed for 2 months, began to regain his energy. He started eating well and sleeping again, and his psychiatrist was happy about his speedy recovery. My positive, beloved Tony was back. From there, he vigorously searched for a job. His experience at a major corporation was an advantage, but due to his reason for resignation being mental health, finding a new job wasn't easy. During this time, we found a small company that needed him. His salary was about 2/3 of what he used to earn, but seeing his eyes shine as he said,
"It's way better than being jobless. Let's do this,"
made me happy. Moreover, it was in the field he wanted. We wanted to have children, but it was clear that life would become difficult if I stopped working. As a result, and because I also love my job, we gave up on having children. At the time, we didn't think about building a house as it was just the two of us. However, a cloud overshadowed our peaceful life. My mother, Karen, became paralyzed due to a traffic accident and had to live in a wheelchair. Since my father passed away when I was in middle school, Karen had been living alone. Our mother-in-law home was an old house. It was far from being wheelchair-friendly with many steps. Tony then suggested,
"I'm worried, let's live together."
Karen and I were surprised, but I love this kind of unexpected kindness from Tony. Tony had just changed jobs, so we didn't know what would happen, but we decided to apply for a mortgage. As expected, it was difficult to get a loan due to the short length of his current employment. But we possess something unbeatable: determination and an unbreakable spirit, our greatest strengths. We persisted, trying out a 5th mortgage company. It was indeed difficult to get Tony's loan approved, but the loan officer proposed various options to us. We took a chance on one of these proposals, and it led to a successful loan approval. We finally decided to buy our own home. I had always dreamt of living in a house filled with the scent of wood. Thick, exposed wooden beams on the ceiling, customized storage spaces designed just for us. A kitchen adjusted to my short stature, and spacious flooring made of cypress. Of course, it is a barrier-free single-story house. The house is perfect for comfortable living in a wheelchair. We couldn't wait for it to be completed and made a daily routine of visiting the construction site. Then our painstakingly designed dream home was finished. It has a large yard where my mother, who had become reluctant to go out, can now enjoy sunbathing. However, there was one dissatisfaction. The land on which we built was given to us by Tony's grandfather. Tony's mother-in-law wasn't particularly rich, but his grandfather adored him. But then, Tony's grandfather was suddenly diagnosed with cancer. Upon learning of his illness, he began to distribute his assets. Tony received the largest plot of land, as per his grandfather's wishes. It felt like winning the lottery, but there was a major catch. The land was just a 5-minute walk from Tony's mother-in-law home. When we told them that my mother would be moving in with us, Tony's sister laughed and said,
"Why is your mother moving in too? How shameless is your mother-in-law? I knew marrying a strange woman like you would cause trouble."
Tony's mother also snidely remarked.
Isn't it awful for my son to be dragged into caring for the elderly? Aren't you some kind of curse?
Even during these times, Tony defended my mother and me, saying,
It's the land that Grandpa gave me. There's no reason for anyone to complain.
Tony's mother and sister are quite malicious, almost world-class. I think it's a miracle that such a kind person like Tony was raised in that mother-in-law. To me, he's like a beautiful lotus flower blooming out of the mud. Tony always said about his family.
I have 2 great examples of what not to be at home.
But I'm sure the reason Tony's grandfather gave us this land was probably because he wanted us to look after his mother in her old age. He also had other properties and gave Tony's sister a parking lot located 10 minutes walk from their mother-in-law home. In terms of size, it's about 2/3 of the land that Tony received. However, it already has a full parking contract, so the monthly parking lot income is significant. Personally, I would have preferred that. But you can't complain about a gift. It is something to be grateful for. In reality, thanks to my GIL, we were able to build a house. Having no cost for the land and being able to use it as collateral for a loan made a big difference. Once the house was completed, we invited my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's mother-in-law. However, during construction, we heard from the builders that they had come to see the house several times without our permission. They arrived an hour and a half later than the agreed time without any apology.
Pardon our intrusion. This is kind of like Grandpa's house too, so it's kind of like our house as well. Oh, such a nice house. The smell of wood is nice, no need for air fresheners,
said my sister-in-law as she waltzed in. Even though her shoes were muddy because of the rain, she didn't mind at all and went straight into our newly built house. Her husband also walked around in muddy shoes, ignoring the slippers we had prepared. When I urged,
We have slippers available if you'd like to wear them,
my sister-in-law laughed and replied, It's such a hassle, you can just wipe the floor. From the get-go, the atmosphere was terrible. And, of course, they came empty-handed. After touring the rooms, they reached my mother's room. My mother's room is the most spacious and has the best sunlight. At my mother's request, we designed it like a duplex, complete with a kitchen. It's a room like a second living area. Seeing this, my mother-in-law said,
I'm fine with this room. I want to live here.
An absurd thing to say. Furthermore, my mother-in-law told my mother,
You were fortunate to have that accident, weren't you? Thanks to being paraplegic, you've moved from that old shack to such a nice house. Isn't it a turn of fortune?
My mother said nothing, but she looked so sad. Inside, I was boiling over with anger. But before I could respond, Tony spoke up.
What did you just say? There are things you can and can't say to people. It makes me question your humanity. I don't even want to think that you're part of my mother-in-law. You're the worst. Apologize now,
Tony said in a strong tone. Whether they found this amusing or not, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law glared at me. Then my sister-in-law confronted Tony with a heated look.
What? What's this all about? That's a total turn off. It's not cool to invite people and then treat them like that. Just because you built a house doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty.
The mother-in-law joined in, too.
Anyway, my son went off the rails because he ended up with a wife like you. You are a jinx.
Tony didn't stay sister-in-law either.
Enough is enough. This mess started because of your rude remarks. You were saying that the accident was a good thing, and calling my wife a jinx. I won't forgive you for that.
The mother-in-law and sister-in-law looked frustrated by Tony's strong rebuttal. Then, my mother, who had been watching the whole scene, apologized with a regretful look. It's okay. I'm living together with them because I actually had an accident, and it's true that I was able to live in this beautiful house from a rundown one. Your son has always been kind to me. Thank you. Perhaps feeling guilty, the mother-in-law and sister-in-law left, shooting me a nasty look. My mother then apologized to Tony. I'm sorry. I must have upset your mother and sisters. I'm sorry I ruined the mood on the day of the housewarming party because of me. Tony also said,
No, I should be the one apologizing. It's embarrassing. They really lack decency. I'm really sorry. But I am happy to be living with you, please understand that.
With that, my mother started to tear up. Since it's near Tony's parents' house, the neighbors are all people we know. They all know Tony since he was a child, so they're very kind to us. 4 months have passed since that mess. When we were finally getting used to our new home, and my mother started to smother-in-law more, an incident occurred. I received a call from home while I was at work. We rarely get calls from home, so it startled me. My bad feeling came true. My mother, unable to hide her agitation, called me.
It's awful. Tony collapsed at work.
I, too, was agitated by the serious tone. I immediately consulted with my boss and headed to the hospital. On the way, I tried to remain calm by unconsciously imagining positive scenarios like,
when I get to the hospital, he'll be all right, and joking around to keep me in good spirits.
But when I arrived at the hospital, I couldn't believe my eyes. My husband, who was supposed to have gone to work cheerfully after eating breakfast as usual. We were supposed to have a movie date this weekend. But now, what I see is him, with countless tubes connected to his body. I was completely lost. The doctor said,
"He's in a very dangerous condition. Even if he survives, we don't know if he will regain consciousness."
I felt as if I was in a movie, and I couldn't even cry. I prayed fervently. Yet, my prayers went unanswered. My husband, Tony, passed away just like that. In my state of shock, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law showed up, as expected. When they heard that Tony had passed away, my sister-in-law aggressively asked,
"Did you poison him or something? Were you after his life insurance money? Did you poison him or something? Were you after his life insurance money?"
Following suit, my mother-in-law cornered me too.
"Bad things always happen when you're around. Just like your mother. You really are a jinx."
I was so sad, I couldn't speak. Just then, my mother arrived in a caregiver's taxi. She was crying at the circumstances of Tony's death. Seeing my mother's tears, I was finally able to cry as well. As the two of us sobbed loudly, my mother-in-law said,
"Oh, stop it. Can you quit the fake crying? My son changed after meeting you too. Now that my son is gone, I don't want to see your faces ever again. Don't appear before us again."
And then she left the hospital. From there, we had a funeral director come in and arrange the schedule for the funeral. We headed to the funeral home. Tony's cause of death was a subarachnoid hemorrhage. I can't believe it, he was fine until morning. When I informed my mother-in-law about the funeral schedule, she replied unexpectedly,
"He always sided with you too, so I won't attend the funeral. My daughter won't come either."
Many people from Tony's company and his friends attended the viewing. However, neither my mother-in-law nor my sister-in-law and her husband were present. It's unbelievable, but maybe that's just the kind of people they were. Many people attended the funeral too, and I could tell that Tony was loved by many. There were many who shed tears for his untimely death. I was glad to spend the whole day with them who sincerely miss my husband. I had received an email from my mother-in-law after Tony's death. But its content was inappropriate, so I didn't reply. The email was asking about the amount of life insurance money. She kept emailing because I hadn't replied, and eventually said,
"I have a right to receive it."
I wasn't in a position to deal with it, so I ignored it. When we arrived at our house, I saw light seeping out of the room. My mother, Karen, looked puzzled and said,
"That's strange. I thought we turned off all the lights. Maybe I forgot to turn it off because I was too agitated."
I replied, "That's all right. It's only natural to be upset given the situation," and unlocked the door to our house. Sure enough, we could hear the sound of a TV coming from inside. Definitely weird. My mom and I exchanged glances, then fearfully entered the room. There, sitting in the room, were my sister-in-law and her husband.
"What are you doing?"
I was so surprised that I couldn't even raise my voice. The living room was filled with unfamiliar furniture and boxes. We had absolutely no clue what was happening. My sister-in-law then said,
"Why did you just barge in here?" "Well, it's your first time, so I'll let you off the hook. We're taking this house. We sold your stuff, so leave."
My mother and I were utterly stunned. We had no idea what was going on. When I asked,
"Where did our stuff and furniture go?"
she nonchalantly replied,
We had a resale company come today and they took everything. You had some pretty good furniture. We got a good price for it. We bought this furniture with that money. Who wants furniture that a dead person used? It's bad luck, isn't it? I'm the type to care about such things. Your stuff is packed in these boxes. I don't know if you're minimalists or just poor, but it was a relief that you had so few things.
The furniture was carefully chosen by my husband. I absolutely couldn't forgive them. My mom was also furious, her face turning beet red, but she was too shocked to reply. I immediately called the resale company. After explaining the situation, they agreed to treat the items as stolen and return them. Honestly, now that my husband is gone, I want nothing to do with his mother-in-law. But I do feel a desire to stay in the house filled with memories of him. As I was struggling with these feelings, my mother said to me in a voice only I could hear,
"What do you think Tony would say if you were here now? Maybe he'd say we should leave?"
I'm sure that's true. Tony always used to say,
"It's worth spending time with people who understand you." But there are also people who just won't get it, no matter how much you explain. It's a waste of time dealing with those low-level aliens.
He was in fact talking about his mother and sister. I can see it clearly now. If we continue to live here, his mother-in-law and relatives will keep interfering. I impulsively signed a lease on an accessible apartment. My mother was taken aback by my decisiveness. I asked the resale company to keep the furniture for a few days, and it was moved to the new apartment 3 days later. In exchange for moving out, I made the mother-in-law and sister-in-law promise to cut ties with us. And so, a new life began with just my mother and me in the apartment. It seems that Tony had so many life insurance policies it was almost obsessive. Tony often joked, always with a mother-in-law,
"When I die, you guys will be rich."
True to his word, my husband left my mother and me enough money to be comfortable for the rest of our lives. He was unable to secure a mortgage when we bought the house. So, being an employee at a major corporation, I purchased the house under my name. I ensured that, even if something happened to Tony first, I certainly wasn't stupid enough to continue paying a mortgage for a house I wouldn't live in. Under the original contract, the house would be auctioned off if the mortgage wasn't paid for 3 months. In the hustle and bustle of life, 3 months passed in a flash. Then, I received a barrage of calls from my sister-in-law, Jessica, with astounding fury. My call history was filled with Jessica and my mother-in-law, Linda.
What the heck? This is seriously scary. It's like something out of a horror movie.
I thought it was a little horror movie. Since they were being incredibly persistent, I picked up the phone only to find out they were furious that the house was being sold. Apparently, when they returned home, they were unable to get in, and there was a seizure notice. Jessica and her husband moved out of the apartment they had been living in since Tony passed away. Jessica had also quit her job. I suggested they move back to their parents' house since they were panicking about suddenly being homeless. To my surprise, Linda had become so involved in gambling that she couldn't keep up and had sold her own house. It seems they have been living together for the past 2 months. From what I hear, they even sold their primary source of income, a parking lot in front of the train station, a long time ago. Now, Linda and Jessica's mother-in-law are completely homeless. When Linda said, "I'm sorry for everything. Let's get along. Can you lend me some money, please?" I replied,
"I think it's best if you stay away since I'm a jinx. We're strangers now that we've severed ties." Linda fell sister-in-law after mumbling a week.
In my mind, I was laughing, thinking,
who's the real bad luck charm here?
Then, when I said,
"I won't lend you a single cent,"
Jessica, who had been listening to the conversation next to Linda, shouted,
"You devil! Bring us the money right now!" Hee hee, I'm a devil and bad luck, so I'm going to hang up now.
I replied and ended the call. In truth, I had a lawyer involved for the past 3 months, pushing for the auction of the house. I thought it was an unusual case, but apparently, it's not that uncommon. The house was sold without any major trouble, allowing our mother-in-law a moment of respite. We planned to find a new home with the money Tony left us. Given it's just my mother and I, we don't need a big house. We'd rather prioritize security as 2 women living together. And so, I chose a condominium with minimal noise disturbance. I remember something my husband always said when we built our home.
People can get energy from the sun. So let's create a place where mother-in-law can enjoy her hobby of reading in the garden without feeling self-conscious."
With those words, he had made a spacious courtyard for her. So, I looked for a condo with a large balcony where she could enjoy her coffee and read. It's smaller than our previous home, but the room is spacious enough to house the furniture my husband proudly chose. The piece of land that was gifted to us by Tony's grandfather was expansive, and the house sold for more than expected. With that money, I bought a rather luxurious condominium. The security is top-notch, so my worrywart husband would surely rest easy. And I heard rumors about my in-law's femother-in-law. Our old neighbors were worried about my sister-in-law's femother-in-law suddenly moving in. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law's femother-in-law were left homeless. They even tried to borrow money from neighbors. In the end, they couldn't borrow anything and ended up living in public housing after consulting with the community. But they're stubborn people, so it seems the trouble never ends. From what I've heard, they caused a commotion by having a barbecue on their small balcony. Their thoughtless actions must have shocked the locals. And whether it's due to a lack of money or just frustration, they seem to have loud arguments every night. People are saying they're causing such a racket that it sounds like things are being thrown around. My sister-in-law's husband left a long time ago, and now it's just her and mother-in-law living together. It's quite the contrast to my peaceful life with my mother, although we're both two-member households. It seems that the neighbors are banding together to try and get this nuisance femother-in-law evicted. No matter where you go, if you're a nuisance, people won't welcome you. What goes around comes around. I just want to live peacefully and quietly, estranged from my embarrassing femother-in-law. I believe that Tony is surely watching over us. From now on, I plan to live my life without causing trouble to others, and do my best to live not just for myself, but for Tony as well.